Today is not just any day. It's the day when the world learned that Pope Francis has left this earthly realm, the day when the chair of Peter stands empty, and a soul who carried the weight of millions now stands before the eternal throne. This is not merely news, not just a headline to scroll past. This is a sacred moment when heaven itself holds its breath, when angels pause, when the balance of spiritual power shifts across the universe. That body, once dressed in white robes of authority, those hands that blessed multitudes, that voice that guided the faithful, now silent on earth, but speaking before the court of heaven. Yet how many live through this moment with indifference? How many wake up, eat breakfast, check their phones, go about their day, as if something monumental hasn't just occurred in the spiritual realm? Padre Pio couldn't bear such spiritual blindness. When he witnessed mystical visions of papal judgment, his entire being trembled. His face reflected the awesome weight of divine scrutiny. He didn't simply talk about spiritual realities. He experienced them in his body, in his soul, in the silence of profound revelation. And because of this, he left us 3 grave warnings. 3 critical truths about what happens when a pope dies, that if ignored today, can completely diminish your understanding of the spiritual world. Truths that open the eyes of the soul. Truths that draw you closer to understanding heaven's perspective. Truths that, without you realizing, can awaken the grace God wants to pour over you today. But there is still time to understand, to witness, to respond. Stay with me until the end, because the 3rd revelation is the most profound and the most astonishing. And once you discover it, you will never view the papacy or your own spiritual journey the same way again. If you too feel a voice in your heart whispering, "I've been blind to these spiritual realities, I've taken them for granted," write in the comments, "Rest in peace, Pope Francis." Open your heart now, because what you are about to hear could transform your faith and prepare your own soul for its final encounter with divine justice. When a pope dies, the veil between worlds grows thin. Angels gather, saints intercede, demons accuse, and the just judge opens the book of life. Padre Pio saw this, and he wept for days afterward. Let us begin this sacred journey into the invisible realm, where the successor of Peter now faces the piercing gaze of the one who holds the keys to eternal life and death. Few people truly understand the spiritual magnitude of a pope's role in the divine order. In God's kingdom, the pope isn't merely a religious leader or a figurehead. According to Padre Pio's revelations, a pope occupies a unique position in the spiritual hierarchy that spans both heaven and earth. He stands as the visible representative of Christ himself, a bridge between the material and the supernatural worlds. When a pope is alive, Padre Pio described seeing a special angelic guard surrounding him at all times. Not just one guardian angel as most of us have, but a celestial court assigned specifically to protect the vicar of Christ. These angels don't just protect his physical body. They shield his soul from the constant spiritual warfare directed against the leader of Christ's church on earth. The burden of a pope, Padre Pio once told a visiting cardinal, is unlike any other human responsibility. Each decision ripples through eternity. He described seeing golden threads connecting the Pope to every baptized soul in the world, millions of spiritual connections that pulsate with every papal pronouncement, every teaching, every action taken or not taken. This is why, at the moment of a Pope's death, there occurs what Padre Pio called the Great Accounting. As Pope Francis took his final breath, these spiritual connections didn't simply disappear. Instead, they became the very pathways through which his soul's impact was measured in the courts of heaven. In that sacred moment when death came for our Holy Father, Padre Pio revealed that time itself functions differently. What seems like seconds to us might be experienced as an eternity in the spiritual realm. The Pope's soul enters a state of profound clarity where every memory, every decision, every soul affected by his papacy comes before him in perfect detail. Nothing is hidden, nothing is forgotten. The bells that toll on earth announcing a pope's death are echoed by a celestial symphony, a sound that reverberates throughout purgatory, causing all souls there to pause and pray for the one who was their shepherd. The saints in heaven gather in solemn assembly. The angels stand at attention. Even the demons must acknowledge this moment of divine judgment. One of Padre Pio's most startling revelations concerned what he called the opening of the papal book. He described seeing a massive, luminous book that appears at the moment of a pope's death. Its pages contain not what the world saw of his papacy, but what heaven saw. The true intentions behind every action, the prayers offered in secret, the silent tears shed for the church, the hidden struggles against temptation. When I witnessed this, Padre Pio confided to his spiritual director, I trembled for days afterward. The weight of papal responsibility is so great that I would not wish it upon anyone. Yet it is a sacred burden, carried for the sake of soul. According to mystical tradition, reinforced by Padre Pio's visions, the moment of a pope's death triggers specific spiritual events that affect the entire church. Masses offered around the world at that exact moment receive special graces. Prayers of the faithful carry heightened power. The veil between heaven and earth grows thin, allowing for extraordinary spiritual clarity for those attuned to such mysteries. The Pope's soul, now freed from his body, experiences what Padre Pio described as the three encounters. First comes the encounter with Christ himself, face to face with the one whose church he led. This is not an encounter of strangers, but the meeting of a servant with his master. Every pope, from Peter to Francis, faces this moment of truth. Second comes the encounter with all the previous popes who have gone before him, that unbroken chain stretching back to the Apostle Peter himself. They stand as witnesses, as brothers who understand the unique burden he carried. And third comes the encounter with every soul significantly impacted by his papacy, both those he helped lead to salvation and those who may have strayed because of his decisions or omissions. This, Padre Pio said, is often the most difficult encounter of all, as Pope Francis now experiences these profound spiritual realities. A momentous shift occurs in the spiritual balance of our world. The protection and guidance that flowed through him must now take new channels until a new pope is chosen. In this sacred interval, heaven watches closely as the Church on earth prepares to select a new vicar of Christ. The moment of judgment for a pope is unlike any other soul's reckoning. Padre Pio described it as a scene of breathtaking solemnity and divine majesty. When Pope Francis stood before Christ, it wasn't merely as a man named Jorge Mario Bergoglio, but as the 266th successor to Peter, the rock upon which Christ built his church. In this celestial courtroom, the full weight of papal responsibility comes into sharp focus. Christ himself sits as judge, not with anger or vengeance, but with perfect justice, tempered by mercy. The apostles, especially Peter, the first pope, stand as witnesses. Mary, Mother of the Church, is present in her role as advocate and intercessor. The judgment of a pope, Padre Pio once revealed during deep ecstasy, involves a review of every soul entrusted to his care. This doesn't mean only Catholics who faithfully followed his teachings, but every person on earth during his pontificate. For the Pope isn't just shepherd to the faithful. He bears responsibility as Christ's representative to all humanity. Imagine the profound moment when Pope Francis faced the divine ledger of his papacy. Each major decision scrutinized not by worldly standards of popularity or political expediency, but by their spiritual fruit. His efforts to reform the Vatican, his emphasis on mercy, his environmental encyclical, his handling of the abuse crisis, his approach to traditional practices, all examined under the penetrating light of divine wisdom. According to Padre Pio's revelations, a pope is judged with particular attention to three sacred duties: to teach the faith without error, to safeguard the sacraments, and to shepherd souls toward salvation. The standards are exacting because the stakes are eternal. Souls have been saved or lost based on papal guidance throughout history. During this judgment, angels present the records of Francis's pontificate, not newspaper headlines or social media reactions, but the true spiritual impact of his leadership. Every homily, every apostolic letter, every private prayer for the church is weighed. Did he defend the deposit of faith? Did he feed Christ's sheep with sound doctrine? Did he seek the lost with the heart of the Good Shepherd? Particularly moving in this judgment, according to mystics in the tradition of Padre Pio, is the moment when the Pope faces those souls most directly affected by his decisions, those who found their way to God through his words, those who may have been scandalized by perceived failures, the seminarians inspired to priesthood by his example, the fallen-away Catholics who returned, or those who drifted further from the Church during his watch. The tears of a pope at judgment, Padre Pio once told a priest confidant, could fill an ocean, for he sees with perfect clarity both the good he accomplished and where he fell short of Christ's expectations. This isn't about condemnation, but about truth, the full truth of a papacy revealed in the light of eternity. What many fail to understand is that a pope's judgment includes examination of hidden spiritual battles unknown to the world. Francis, like all popes before him, faced supernatural opposition targeted specifically at undermining his mission. Demonic forces worked tirelessly to attack the head in order to scatter the flock. In the divine courtroom, these unseen struggles are finally acknowledged. One of the most misunderstood aspects of papal judgment concerns the Pope's personal holiness versus his official actions. Padre Pio explained that a pope might be personally holy, yet make decisions that led souls astray, or conversely, he might have personal struggles yet fulfill his papal obligations faithfully. Both dimensions are judged, the man and the office he held. The critical moments of Francis's pontificate come under particular scrutiny. The synod on the family, his approach to divorced and remarried Catholics, his outreach to other faiths, his handling of doctrinal questions. Yet alongside these public acts, heaven also examines his hidden sacrifices, midnight prayers, and personal penances offered for the church he loved. In this celestial tribunal, there is no propaganda, no spin, no public relations strategy, only truth. The Pope, who spent his life surrounded by advisors, secretaries, and crowds, now stands alone before his Lord. The papal garments that distinguished him on earth mean nothing now. Only the substance of his stewardship matters. Yet amidst this sobering accountability, Padre Pio reminds us of an astonishing mercy. Christ judges with perfect justice, but also with understanding of human frailty. The Pope, who bore such immense responsibility, receives particular compassion for having carried a burden few can comprehend. The good he accomplished isn't overshadowed by his mistakes. Each is weighed in proper measure. Perhaps most profound is what Padre Pio called the question. The same question Christ asked Peter 3 times by the Sea of Galilee, now asked of his successor at judgment. Do you love me? In the end, beyond all policies and pronouncements, this remains the essential criterion by which a pope is judged. Did he love Christ? Did that love inform his leadership? Did it inspire his every decision as shepherd of the church? As Pope Francis answers this question in eternity, the fate of his immortal soul hangs in the balance. What happens after the divine judgment of a pope? According to Padre Pio's mystical insights, there are 3 possible destinations for a pope's soul, just as there are for every human being. Yet the journey takes on extraordinary significance, given the Pope's unique role in salvation history. Heaven may immediately welcome a pontiff whose life and leadership reflected Christ's will with exceptional fidelity. This immediate glorification is rare, but possible. Padre Pio spoke of seeing certain popes receive directly into the beatific vision, their souls radiating with a distinctive glory that marked their papal service. They take their place in a special council of former pontiffs who continue to intercede for the Church from heaven. More commonly, Padre Pio revealed, a pope's soul requires purification in purgatory. The mystic described seeing a special realm within purgatory reserved for religious leaders, a place where the fire of divine love burns away any remaining attachment to human praise, any pride in ecclesiastical accomplishments, any failure in shepherding the flock. The purgatory of popes, Padre Pio explained to a visiting bishop, is particularly intense because their purification must be commensurate with the graces they received. A pope experiences purification not just for personal failings, but for how his leadership affected countless souls. Each soul led astray through papal negligence or misguided teaching creates a debt that must be satisfied before entering heaven's glory. Most strikingly, Padre Pio spoke of the prayers offered for a deceased pope having extraordinary spiritual power. When the faithful pray for their departed Holy Father, these prayers create what Padre Pio described as rivers of mercy that flow directly to the Pope's soul, hastening his purification. The masses offered worldwide after a pope's death become powerful spiritual aid in his final journey. Could a pope face eternal separation from God? Padre Pio acknowledged this devastating possibility exists for anyone who fundamentally rejects God's will, even a successor of Peter. The mystic described this potential tragedy as something that would create cosmic spiritual trauma throughout the Church. While never claiming to know the eternal fate of any specific pope, Padre Pio urged prayers for all pontiffs, recognizing the tremendous weight of their responsibility. What many fail to understand is that a pope's influence continues even after death. Padre Pio described seeing how a pontiff's teachings, decisions, and example continue generating spiritual consequences long after he has departed earth. This ongoing impact affects his eternal status. Both the good and harmful fruits of his papacy continue to accrue to his account. Perhaps most mysterious is what Padre Pio called the papal intercession. He claimed that even from purgatory, a pope maintains a special connection to the Church on earth. While undergoing purification, a departed pontiff can offer potent prayers for his successor and for the challenges facing the Church he once led. This creates a spiritual continuity between successors of Peter that transcends death itself. For Pope Francis, this journey into eternity now unfolds beyond our earthly vision. The ceremonies, eulogies, and tributes occurring on earth are merely shadows of the profound spiritual realities taking place in the realm of souls. His papal ring has been destroyed according to tradition, symbolizing the end of his authority on earth, yet his spiritual responsibility for his papacy continues in eternity. Most comforting among Padre Pio's revelations is his insistence that the Blessed Mother takes special interest in the souls of departed popes. As Mother of the Church, Mary extends particular care to those who served as Christ's vicars. Her powerful intercession accompanies them through judgment and purification. What does this mean for us? Padre Pio urged the faithful to understand that our prayers for a deceased pope are not merely ceremonial, they are spiritually efficacious. Each rosary, each mass, each act of charity offered for the repose of Pope Francis' soul provides real assistance in his journey toward the beatific vision. And in the divine economy of grace, these prayers simultaneously strengthen the Church on earth during its time of transition. As the sacred conclave prepares to select a new pope, the spiritual destiny of Francis unfolds in the courts of eternity. What can we learn from the divine judgment of a pope that applies to our own spiritual journey? Padre Pio was clear. While a pontiff's judgment carries unique elements, the underlying principles apply to every soul. The same God who judges popes will one day judge each of us. First, we must understand that responsibility correlates with accountability. Jesus himself taught, "To whom much is given, much will be required." A pope bears immense spiritual responsibility and faces corresponding scrutiny. But each of us, parent, teacher, business leader, influencer will likewise be judged according to our sphere of influence. The parent who guides children, the teacher who shapes young minds, the manager who affects employees' lives, all bear responsibility for how they've influenced others. Padre Pio often reminded penitents, "You may not wear the papal tiara, but you too are responsible for souls." Every conversation where you could have shared faith but remained silent, every opportunity to defend truth you avoided, every soul your example either inspired or led astray, all will be part of your judgment. This isn't meant to terrify, but to awaken us to the profound significance of our daily choices. Second, Padre Pio emphasized the importance of recognizing our specific vocation. A pope is judged according to how faithfully he fulfilled his papal duties, not how well he might have served as a parish priest or missionary. Similarly, you will be judged based on how faithfully you lived your particular calling. The married person isn't expected to live like a monk, nor is the business person judged by standards meant for clergy. What matters is faithfulness to your specific path. Before judging others, Padre Pio would counsel, remember that you too will stand before the just judge. How often we scrutinize church leaders, dissecting their every word and decision. Yet each critic will one day face their own comprehensive judgment. This should inspire humility and prayer rather than harsh criticism. By all means, we must uphold truth and protect the faith, but always with the sobering awareness that we ourselves will be judged by the same measure we use for others. Perhaps most importantly, Padre Pio reminds us that divine judgment, while exacting, is also infused with mercy. The Pope who stands before Christ faces perfect justice, tempered by perfect understanding. So too will you and I. Christ knows our struggles, our weaknesses, the precise circumstances of our failures. He takes into account not just our actions, but our intentions, not just our public persona, but our inner heart. A pope prepares for his judgment through daily prayer, regular confession, and constant vigilance over his responsibilities. We would be wise to do the same. Padre Pio advised daily examination of conscience, frequent confession, and regular reflection on our ultimate accountability to God. Live each day, he counseled, as if you might meet God before sunset. As we witness the solemnity surrounding a papal death and contemplate the spiritual realities Padre Pio described, let this be more than interesting spiritual speculation. Let it be a mirror in which we examine our own lives. The same divine light that now illuminates Pope Francis's papacy will one day shine upon every aspect of your life and mine. Are you prepared for that moment? Are you living in a way that will withstand divine scrutiny? Or are there areas of your life that need transformation before you face your own judgment day? As we conclude our exploration of what happens in heaven when a pope dies, let us remember that these profound spiritual realities affect not just the papal soul, but the entire body of Christ. Padre Pio revealed these mysteries not to satisfy curiosity, but to deepen our understanding of the spiritual world that exists beyond our physical sight. Pope Francis now faces the divine tribunal where no earthly accomplishments, diplomatic achievements, or public acclaim carry weight, only faithfulness to Christ's mission. And one day, you and I will stand before that same tribunal, our souls laid bare before perfect justice and perfect mercy. Let this solemn moment in the Church's life prompt sincere prayer, not just for Pope Francis's soul as he completes his journey, but for the cardinals who now bear the weighty responsibility of selecting his successor. The spiritual battle intensifies during this sacred transition, as heaven and hell both recognize the immense stakes involved in choosing the next vicar of Christ. May we learn from Padre Pio's mystical insights to live with an awareness of our final judgment. May we recognize that every action, every decision, every word we speak creates ripples in eternity. And may we approach each day with the humility of knowing that we too will one day stand before Christ, giving account for every soul we've influenced. If these revelations have touched your heart today, please write in the comments, Eternal rest grant unto him, O Lord. Your prayer joins millions of others ascending to heaven for our departed Holy Father. And please share this video with someone who needs this spiritual perspective during this historic moment for our church. Remember, the death of a pope is not the end. It's a profound transition in the spiritual realm. And as we witness this sacred passage, may it prepare us for our own eventual journey from time into eternity.